Good afternoon, basketball and hockey fans. Big Al here on this Monday, November 20th, 2023, and welcome to my weekly check of the NBA and NHL standings, as we'll look at the current standings in both leagues through Sunday, November 19th, and we'll also look at the schedule of games in both leagues coming up. All right, so starting as always, in the NBA, the Boston Celtics are atop the Atlantic Division at 11-2. They are 2 in their last 10 games, and they've won 6 in a row. Sitting a close second are the Philadelphia 76ers at 10-3, 1 game back. They are also 8-2 in their last 10 games, including 2 straight wins. The New York Knicks sit third place, 8-5, 3 games behind the Celtics, 7-3 in their last 10 games, including 3 straight wins. And tied at the bottom of the Atlantic are the Brooklyn Nets and Toronto Raptors, both at 6-7, and both trailing the Celtics by 5 games. Both teams are 5-5 in their last 10 games. Brooklyn has lost 2 in a row, while Toronto won their last game. Over in the Central Division, it's the Milwaukee Bucks leading the way at 9-4, 7-3 in their last 10, including 4 straight wins. Second place are the Indiana Pacers, 7-5, 1.5 games behind Milwaukee, 5-5 in their last 10 games, including a loss in their most recent game. In third place are the Cleveland Cavaliers, 7-6, 2 games behind the Bucks, 6-4 in their last 10, including 3 straight wins. In fourth place, you've got the Chicago Bulls at 5-9, 4.5 games out of first, 3-7 in their last 10, including a win in their most recent game. And sitting with the worst record in the association through November 19th are the Detroit Pistons at 2-12. 7.5 games out already behind the Bucks, 0-10 in their last 10 games, and they also have the longest active losing streak in the league at 11 in a row. The Miami Heat and the Orlando Magic are tied atop the Southeast Division at 8-5. Miami is 7-3 in their last 10 games, including a loss in their most recent game, while Orlando is 6-4 in their last 10, including 3 straight wins. In third place, you've got the Atlanta Hawks, 6-6, 1.5 games behind Miami and Orlando, 6-4 in their last 10, including 2 straight losses. The Charlotte Hornets are in fourth place at 3-9, 4.5 games out of first, 2-8 in their last 10, including 4 straight losses. And probably the worst team in the league, not named the Pistons. That's the Washington Wizards at 2-10, 5.5 games behind both the Heat and the Magic, 1-9 in their last 10 games, including 5 straight losses. Over to the Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks are atop the Southwest Division at 9-5, 5-5 in their last 10 games, including 2 straight losses. In second place are the Houston Rockets, 6-5, 1.5 games out behind the Mavs, 6-4 in their last 10, including 2 straight losses. The New Orleans Pelicans sit third in this division at 6-7, trailing Dallas by 2.5 games, 4-6 over their last 10, including a loss in their last game. And tied at the bottom of the Southwest are both the Memphis Grizzlies and the San Antonio Spurs, sitting at 3-10, and both 5.5 games behind Dallas. Memphis is 3-7 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game, and San Antonio is 2-8 in their last 10, including 8 straight losses. Second longest active losing streak in the league, ahead of the Pistons. You've got a virtual tie atop the Northwest Division, with the Minnesota Timberwolves sitting 9-3 and the Oklahoma City Thunder at 10-4. Minnesota is 8-2 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. And Oklahoma City is red hot, 7-3 in their last 10, including 5 straight wins. In a close third are the defending NBA champs, the Denver Nuggets, at 9-4, just a half game behind the Timberwolves and Thunder. They are 6-4 in their last 10, including 2 straight losses. The Utah Jazz sit in fourth at 4-9, 5.5 games out behind Minnesota and OKC, 3-7 in their last 10 games, including 2 straight losses. And at the bottom of the Northwest, the Portland Trailblazers, 3-10, 6.5 games out of first, 3-7 in their last 10 games, including 7 straight losses. That brings us now to the Pacific Division, where the Sacramento Kings lead the way with an 8-4 record, 7-3 in their last 10, including 6 straight wins. LeBron's LA Lakers are second at 8-6, 1 game behind the Kings, 6-4 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. In third place, you've got the Phoenix Suns at 7-6, 1.5 games behind Sacramento, 5-5 in their last 10, including 3 straight wins. In fourth place, the Golden State Warriors at 6-8, 3 games out behind the Kings, 3-7 in their last 10, including 6 straight losses. Not good. And in last place, you've got the Los Angeles Clippers at 4-7, 3.5 games out of first place behind the Kings, 3-7 in their last 10 games, including a win in their most recent game. All right, looking at the playoff picture, I know it's early, but it's fun to talk playoffs. The top 6 teams, there we go, lock up playoff spots, and 7 through 10 would make the play-in tournament. So at the time, the top 6 in the East are the Boston Celtics at 11-2 in the number 1 spot. Then it's Philadelphia at 10-3, sitting second. The Milwaukee Bucks at 9-4, they're in the 3 seed. And then you've got a tie with Miami, Orlando, and New York, all 8-5. Based on tiebreakers, Miami would be the 4 seed, Orlando the 5 seed, and New York the 6 seed. As for the teams that would make the play-in tournament, you've got the Indiana Pacers sitting 7th at 7-5. The Cleveland Cavaliers in the 8th spot at 7-6. The Atlanta Hawks at 6-6 in the number 9 seed. And there's a tie for the 10th and final spot in the East with Brooklyn and Toronto, both 6-7. Brooklyn would win the tiebreaker as of right now, which puts them in that coveted 10th spot, while Toronto is 11th. Meanwhile, on the outside of the playoffs, you've got Chicago at 5-9. They are a game and a half out of the play-in tournament. Charlotte at 3-9 and 2.5 games out. Washington at 2-12, 3.5 games out. And Detroit at 2-12, 4.5 games out. Then over in the West, there's a tie at the top with Minnesota and Oklahoma City, a virtual tie. Minnesota is 9-3 and sitting in that number 1 spot, while Oklahoma City is 10-4 and sitting in the number 2 spot. The defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets are 3rd at the present time at 9-4. The Sacramento Kings are 4th at 8-4. They are actually in a virtual tie with the Dallas Mavericks, who are 9-5. So Sacramento is the 4 seed based on win percentage, and Dallas is 5. And then the last team in the playoffs as of right now would be the LA Lakers at 8-6. They are in the number 6 spot. Houston and Phoenix are in a virtual tie for 7th in the West. They would both make the play-in tournament at this time. Houston is 6-5 and sitting in the number 7 spot, while Phoenix is 7-6 and sitting number 8. New Orleans would be 9th at 6-7, and the Golden State Warriors would round out the play-in tournament in the 10 spot at 6-8. The LA Clippers at 4-7 would be a half game out. Utah at 4-9 would be a game and a half out. And then Memphis, Portland, and San Antonio, all at 3-10, they would sit 2.5 games out. Memphis is presently 13th, Portland is 14th, and San Antonio is 15th. Okay, now let's take a look at the ahead in the NBA. Starting off with tonight, you've got Denver at Detroit at 7 p.m. Eastern. Milwaukee at Washington, also at 7 p.m. Eastern. Same with Boston at Charlotte. At 8 p.m. Eastern, Miami visits Chicago. New York is at Minnesota. The Clippers are in San Antonio. And those are the 3 games at 8 p.m. And then the late game at 10 o'clock Eastern time is Houston at Golden State. So the Warriors are trying to end that 6-game losing streak. I apologize, guys. I caught something late last night. My throat hurts a little, my head hurts a little, and my nose is starting to get stuffed up, but I'll be fine. On the Tuesday schedule, you've got Toronto at Orlando at 7 p.m. Eastern, Indiana at Atlanta, and Cleveland at Philly, both at 7:30. And then later that night, Portland visits Phoenix at 9, and the Lakers host Utah at 10. So not quite a busy night in the NBA with just 5 games on Tuesday. Wednesday will be a busy night. You've got Denver at Orlando and Washington at Charlotte, both at 7 p.m. Brooklyn at Atlanta, Milwaukee at Boston, Miami at Cleveland, and Toronto at Indiana. Both or all of those games are at 7:30. Then you've got Memphis at Houston, Philadelphia at Minnesota, the Clippers at San Antonio, and Chicago at Oklahoma City, all starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then at 10, you've got Golden State at Phoenix and Utah at Portland. And at 10:30, the Lakers will host Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. Thursday, of course, is Thanksgiving, so there are no games. They'll resume on Friday with some day games. You got Boston at Orlando at 2:30 Eastern time. Phoenix at Memphis at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Then you go into your nightly schedule with Miami at New York and Chicago at Toronto, both at 7:30. Denver visits Houston, Detroit's at Indiana, Washington at Milwaukee, and Sacramento at Minnesota, all at 8 o'clock on Friday night. Then at 10, San Antonio at Golden State, and at 10:30, the Clippers will host New Orleans. On to Saturday, Philly is in Oklahoma City at 5 p.m. Eastern, followed by Miami at Brooklyn at 6. Atlanta and Washington will face off in D.C. at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then it's the Lakers and Cleveland as LeBron returns to his hometown. That's at 7:30. New Orleans is in Utah at 9:30. And the Clippers will again host Dallas at 10:30 on Saturday. And finally on Sunday, you've got Portland at Milwaukee, early game at 3:30. Then you've got Atlanta at Boston, Phoenix at New York, Charlotte at Orlando, and Minnesota at Memphis, all at 6 p.m. Eastern. At 7:30, you've got Toronto at Cleveland and Chicago at Brooklyn. Final game of the night is San Antonio at Denver, and that's at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So that is a look at the NBA standings and the schedule for the coming week. Now let's shift our attention to the National Hockey League. And we'll look at the standings there first. Beginning in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Bruins are atop the Atlantic Division, 18 games played, 13-1-2 for 28 points, and 12 wins in regulation or overtime. In second place, you've got the red-hot Florida Panthers, 17 games played, 11-1, 23 points, all 11 wins coming in regulation or overtime. Apologies, there's a jet flying over my house. Third place are the Toronto Maple Leafs, 17 games played, 10-5-2 for 22 points, 8 wins in regulation or overtime. Sitting fourth, you've got the Tampa Bay Lightning, 18 games played, 8-6-4, 20 points, and 8 wins in regulation or overtime. Dropping to fifth place are the Detroit Red Wings, 17 games played, 8-6-3, 19 points, all 8 wins in regulation or overtime. Then you've got the sixth place Buffalo Sabres, 18 games played, 8-9-1 for 17 points, and 8 wins in regulation or overtime. And you have a tie in points for seventh place, or the bottom of the Atlantic, the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens. Ottawa's played 15 games. They are 8-7 with 16 points and 7 wins in regulation or overtime. Montreal has played 18 games. They're 7-9-2 for 16 points and 6 wins in regulation or overtime. Jumping over to the Metro, the New York Rangers are on top. 15 games played, 12-1, 25 points, 11 wins in regulation or overtime. Then you've got the Philadelphia Flyers sitting in second place. 18 games played, 10-7-1, 21 points, and all 10 victories coming in regulation or overtime. Yeah, my nose is running like crazy. I apologize, guys. And then you have a points tie for third with both the Washington Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes. Washington played 15 games. They are 9-4-2 with 7 wins in regulation or overtime. While Carolina has played 17 games, they are 10-7 with 9 wins in or overtime, and both teams sit with 20 points. The Pittsburgh Penguins are in fifth place, 17 games played, record of 9-8 for 18 points, all 9 wins in regulation or overtime. The New Jersey Devils have fallen into a 6th place points tie with the New York Islanders. New Jersey played 16 games. They are 8-7-1 with 17 points and 8 wins in regulation or overtime. While the Islanders have played 17 games, they are 6-6-5, also with 17 points and 5 wins in regulation or overtime. The Columbus Blue Jackets presently have the worst record in the Eastern Conference. 19 games played, 4-11-4, 12 points, all 4 of their wins in regulation or overtime. Jumping to the Western Conference now. The Dallas Stars have a slight lead in the Central Division. 16 games played, 11-4-1 for 23 points, 10 wins in regulation or overtime. Then you have a tie for second points-wise with both the Colorado Avalanche and Winnipeg Jets. Colorado played 16 games. They are 11-5 with 10 wins in regulation or overtime. Winnipeg has played 17 games. They are 10-5-2, also with 10 wins in regulation or overtime, both teams with 22 points. In fourth place, you have St. Louis Blues, 17 games played, 9-7-1, 19 points, 8 wins in regulation or overtime. In fifth place, the Arizona Coyotes, 17 games played, 8-7-2, 18 points, 6 wins in regulation or overtime. Sitting in sixth place are the Minnesota Wild, 17 games played, 5-8-4, 14 points, 4 wins in regulation or overtime. The Nashville Predators are in seventh place, 16 games played, 6-10 record, 12 points, all 6 wins in regulation or overtime. And at the bottom of the Central are the Chicago Blackhawks, 16 games played and a record of 5-11 for 10 points, and all 5 wins in regulation or overtime. Now to the Pacific Division. The Vegas Golden Knights, reigning Stanley Cup champions, sit atop the Pacific, 19 games played, 13-4-2 for 28 points, 10 wins in regulation or overtime. They are tied with the Boston Bruins for the most points in the NHL. A very close second are the surprising Vancouver Canucks, 18 games played, 12-5-1 record for 25 points. And all 12 of Vancouver's wins coming in regulation or overtime. Then you've got the Los Angeles Kings in third place. 16 games played, 10-3-3, 23 points. All 10 wins in regulation or overtime. In fourth place, you got a tie with both the Anaheim Ducks and the Seattle Kraken. Anaheim has played 18 games. They are 9-9 with 9 wins in regulation or overtime. Seattle has played 19 games. They are 7-8-4 with 6 wins in regulation or overtime. And both teams sit with 18 points. In sixth place, you've got the Calgary Flames. 17 games played, 6-8-3, 15 points, 6 wins in regulation or overtime. Seventh place are their Alberta natives to the north, the Edmonton Oilers. Or should I say their Alberta neighbors to the north, the Edmonton Oilers. 16 games played, 5-10-1, 11 points, 5 wins in regulation or overtime. And sitting with the worst overall record in the NHL still are the San Jose Sharks. 17 games played, 3-13-1, 7 points, and 3 wins in regulation or overtime. So looking at the playoff picture in the NHL after Sunday, we'll start in the East. The top 3 teams in the Atlantic would be Boston with 28 points, Florida with 23 points, and Toronto with 22. And the top 3 in the Metro Division would be the New York Rangers with 25 points, Philadelphia with 21, and then Washington and Carolina are both tied for that third spot at 20 points apiece, but Washington owns the tiebreaker. The 2 wildcard teams in the Eastern Conference would be Carolina and Tampa, both with 20 points. The Hurricanes have played 17 games, while the Lightning has played 18. Detroit with 19 points would be 1 single point out, followed by Pittsburgh, two points out. The Devils, Islanders, and Sabres all at 17 points would be 3 points out of a playoff spot at this present time. Ottawa and Montreal both 4 points out, and Columbus already sitting 8 points out. Over in the Western Conference, the top 3 teams in the Central would be Dallas with 23 points, Colorado with 22, and Winnipeg also with 22. The top 3 would be Vegas with 28 points, Vancouver with 25, and the LA Kings with 23. The 2 wildcard teams as of right now would both come from the Central Division. You've got St. Louis with 19 points. They would be the top wildcard in the West. Then you got a tie for that second wildcard spot with Arizona, Anaheim, and Seattle, all at 18 points. The tiebreaker would go to Arizona, which would bump Anaheim and Seattle down. At the present time, Calgary would be 3 points out, Minnesota 4 points out, Nashville 6 points out, Edmonton 7 points out, Chicago 8 points out, and San Jose 11 points out. Okay, so those are the NHL standings. Now let's take a look at the week coming up in the National Hockey League, and we'll start with tonight's games. Boston visits Tampa Bay at 7 p.m. Eastern. Edmonton is at Florida at that same time. At 8 Eastern, you've got two games. The New York Rangers at the Dallas Stars and Colorado at Nashville. At 9 p.m. Eastern, it's the LA Kings at Arizona. And then two games late at 10 p.m. Eastern, San Jose at Vancouver and Calgary at Seattle. There are no games in the NHL on Tuesday, so we'll jump ahead to Wednesday, where you've got the Detroit Red Wings hosting the New Jersey Devils. You've also got Edmonton at Carolina, the New York Rangers at Pittsburgh, Winnipeg at Tampa Bay, Buffalo at Washington, Boston at Florida, and Chicago at Columbus. All those games will face off at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. A half hour after that at 7:30, it's the New York Islanders hosting the Philadelphia Flyers. Then at 9 p.m. Eastern, you've got St. Louis at Arizona and Calgary at Nashville. At 9:30, it's Vegas at Dallas. The two division leaders in the Western Conference squaring off. That's at 9:30. And then you have three late games. Vancouver at Colorado, Montreal at Anaheim, and San Jose at Seattle, all at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. Thanksgiving is Thursday, so there are no games scheduled. So that brings us to Friday. Got a couple matinee games, a number of them, in fact. You've got Detroit at Boston and the New York Rangers at Philadelphia, both at 1 p.m. Eastern. At 2 p.m. Eastern, the Chicago Blackhawks will host the Toronto Maple Leafs. Then you have a trio of games at 3 p.m. Eastern, Columbus at New Jersey, Nashville at St. Louis, and Edmonton at Washington. At 3:30, you've got two more games, Montreal at San Jose and LA at Anaheim. At 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Pittsburgh visits Buffalo. Then at 7:30, it's the New York Islanders at Ottawa. Then you've got Tampa Bay at Carolina and Winnipeg at Florida, both at 8 p.m. Eastern. Calgary visits Dallas at 8:30, as does Colorado and Minnesota. And at 10 p.m. Eastern, the Seattle Kraken will host the Vancouver Canucks. On Saturday, you've got the Boston Bruins and the New York Rangers playing a matinee at Madison Square Garden at 1 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Montreal Canadiens at the Los Angeles Kings at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1 p.m. in LA. Then, I did not want to do that. Here we go. Okay, you've got two games at 7 p.m. Eastern, Buffalo at New Jersey and Toronto at Pittsburgh. The Philadelphia Flyers visit the New York Islanders at 7:30. And then you've got three games out west. Colorado hosts Calgary at 10 p.m. Eastern, same time as Vancouver at San Jose and Arizona at Vegas. And that brings us to Sunday the 26th, where there's 5 games on the schedule, including 2 matinees. The Minnesota Wild at the Detroit Red Wings is at 1 p.m. Eastern, and the St. Louis Blues and Chicago Blackhawks is an hour later at 2 p.m. Eastern. Then at 5 p.m., Carolina hosts Columbus. At 8 p.m., it's Winnipeg at Nashville, And the week wraps up at 10 p.m. Eastern on Sunday night, or rather 9 p.m. Eastern on Sunday night, with Anaheim and Edmonton. And those are the updated standings in the NBA and NHL and the upcoming schedules for the coming week in both leagues. All right, tomorrow is going to be a very busy day for me. I will be recording the week that was early on Tuesday. I'll try to get it as early as possible. Get those 2 videos knocked out. Then we'll also be doing the live reaction to the college football playoff standings, which will be released tomorrow night. I'll be going live with that at about 6:45 p.m. Eastern, so make sure you join me for that. I normally do the college football television schedules on Tuesday, but I'm going to push that back to Wednesday. And also on Wednesday, I will be making my Week 12 NFL picks ahead of Thanksgiving's triple header and the Black Friday game coming up. So I got about 48 hours to get all of this knocked out, and I have a feeling I'm going to be able to do that. So join me for all of those videos this week. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and happy early Thanksgiving, ladies and gents. Peace out.